I talked to him
You know, as far as I'm concerned, we're recording. Everybody's invited who wants to be here. I had invited all of my magistrates. It's open to everybody. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to, that's those originals, Chris, in case we refer to them.
We're not on yet, are we?
I think so. Not yet.
Any minute we will be.
10 o'clock. I don't have a gavel, but,
Would you like me to go get it?
no.
Okay. Use your fist.
We'll start this committee, transition committee discussion, and it's recorded, it's live. I don't know, Judge, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad everybody's here. I thought the last meeting, I think Ted probably gave you that it went well. I thought it was, as we reported into the paper, it was cordial. We've had a court session since then, and just being completely open. We had a couple of people that thought that this meeting not need to be restricted from anybody's viewing and vantage point, so we're open to everybody. I will say, Judge, and this is not from the court or from your office, the Harrisburg Herald article, which Robert did, and was basically a follow-on from the Danville Advocate Messenger article.
Yes.
Seemed to get the, I don't know what the right word, concern by some of the couple of our magistrates that we were being painted as the mean old ogre in this, and I think you and I have talked about it's time to maybe look at transition. Hey, Ted, you know, just
Yeah.
seeing what we can keep, what we like,
Ronnie,
what
I'll
works.
scoot around here. You can have this.
What I did yesterday, because Magistrate Ellis had said that he had got a call from another magistrate and from our jailer. I've called my contact with, you need to know this, Chris, with the Attorney General's office. The only one I know where is John Hughes, that helped campaign with the Attorney General. And anyway, I've asked him I'm going to send him all of this, okay, and the newspaper articles, so they have full, as much as they need to have, so they can look at this and give us an updated opinion of what Ben Chandler did in 97, 98. Ted, I see you're frowning.
Sure. Yeah,
I think you are behind the mask. I left mine in there, but we're okay.
It's not the AG's, apologize for not having the statute here in front of me, but that was not the AG, it's not the AG's office. They were under the original agreement as to, I guess, giving a statement as to the legality of it. And that's not them now, isn't it, DLG that has to? It should be in our addendum. It should be what whoever.
The addendum is is this
I think it's signed off on by the Attorney General and DLG now, is how the statute reads.
because if it's DLG, and I don't see it in this addendum, which is dated July 25th of 2018, maybe that's not the addendum I need to be looking at.
Well, regardless, the AG can
I think
any time come in on any issue
All
of
he
legality
needed from
under
us,
the statutes.
Was the Attorney General's opinion number, if there was a number associated with it back in 97, 98.
Ted, in parallel to that, right now, there's a challenge between Kentucky Fish and Wildlife and the governor to show that the AG can get involved in anything. He's deep into that right now. Sure. So it's very appropriate, and I was thrilled when the judge told me yesterday that he had made that call to the AG's office for clarification.
Well, I think at some point, now I don't know who, you guys are the attorneys in the room. if there is a point of contention from the attorneys representing the Kentucky Jailers Association with this agreement, how do we adjudicate that to understand what their legal issues are and what is constitutionally and statutorily approved by this contract? Maybe I'm not making myself clear.
I guess you file like a declaration of rights or whatever and have them ask the circuit judge what the true interpretation is.
Yeah, you could file a deck action on that, of course, and I'll say this, you know, if the Jailers Association has concerns with it, put pen to paper or finger to keyboard.
Are we talking about filing
Well,
a suit?
No.
Let us know what it is.
Yeah, send a letter and
That'd
tell
be
me,
good.
because, you know, respectfully, what I saw from Brian's objections, basically to me looked like it was every jailer's duty outlined by KRS and the Kentucky Constitution, and he said, I can't do my job because of this agreement. You know, so if the Jailers Association has anything specific, you know, I mean, let them outline it, and respectfully to Brian and to the Jailers Association, you know, I mean, if they wanna hang their hat on any particular case law or anything like that, you know, then, you know, under this case, you know.
Not the regional jail cases, but this case.
Yeah, well, and like I said at our last meeting, you know, this issue is both Mercer and Boyle County, but I said to me, it's a bigger issue, you know, with the ability of two governmental entities to have a long-term contract that can be relied upon, that's not subject to the whims, if you will, of whoever is temporarily in
The jail or in these offices,
any
of the five.
Yeah, I mean,
Any
we
of the
gotta,
five.
you know, we gotta be able to, because we've got this immediate issue, and that's the bigger issue for the Commonwealth, for 120 counties, for 1,000 cities.
Yeah.
And we gotta, you know, there has to be a mechanism for that. You know, whether it's this agreement or if there's something wrong, somebody tell us and we can do it, but, you know, it's for 23 years this thing has gone on and everybody has operated under it.
Well, if you don't mind, I don't think it's wrong for me to ask the Attorney General to give me what they think about this, though.
Sure. And I'm not saying don't do that, I was just, and I'll go back, look at the statute, I'll be happy to shoot you or anybody else in the room an email. I just don't recall that the AG is the one that you know, has to approve form and legality for this, but I could be wrong, Judge.
Well, I don't think there's an approval. I'm looking at the legal sufficiency, the arguments that we're jeopardizing another constitutionally elected officer's responsibilities.
Sure, okay. And I think that, you know, I think the AG will have an opinion, but as far as something being firm and, you know, I've got an opinion, Chris has an opinion, the AG has an opinion. We all have opinions, judges make rulings, and you know, and a deck action might be, you know, it might be appropriate. I don't know.
Or we get an opinion and then we have a mediation or something amongst each other if we can't come to some kind of agreement. You know?
I think we're involved in that today.
Wasn't this
I don't
kind of
even
what we're
think
talking about?
All right, I mean, it'd be good to see what the Attorney General has to say, and, you know, I think that they've mentioned that maybe they've consulted with counsel or whatever as well, so I mean, I think that's our right as well to do that, and then if their counsel can put something in writing how they feel, you know, the legality, you know, if this agreement's good or not, they can put that, and our, you know, then the Attorney General or whoever we get can do the same thing, and then we can each, Ted and I can look it over.
Well, I want all of our jailers' concerns to be thoroughly examined, okay? And I just think we need to say there's smoke there, or there's not smoke there, or something like that. You know, that's what I want to kind of get to, because if this goes forward, and I kind of hope that it does, because the partnership has been successful for 23 years. I just want everybody to feel like if he's got concerns, he's the one that raised the issue, and I just need to feel like he's being addressed completely. As our part of responsibility to a bigger picture to address his concerns. If you had a concern, we would want to do the same thing. If you had an issue about it that you felt like was wrong, we just try to address the issue and see what we can find out. Anybody.
I mean, I believe Mercer needs us, but we need Mercer.
I agree with that. And what, you know, without giving a thumbs up over approval, but these are two guys. It's been successful for 23 years. I think there may have been some stumbles along the way, but it's something that I always work through.
In the calls and emails that I've gotten since we met, and since the unfortunate and untimely, because we met before that called article in the newspaper over in Harrodsburg, everybody I talked to, I've been saying, we had an incredibly cooperative, collaborative meeting.
And his statement was exactly that.
And using the judge's word of, we believe we can get together, as we're doing today, and tweak the language and let the other issue work itself out. And I think we're going to have affirmed that the jailer is correct under the statutes and particularly under the Constitution with his authority. And I found some things in here that might even lend itself more to it if something does not exist that is mentioned in one section of the current document and not mentioned in the other. And we can just move forward with the attorneys that are here and try to tweak the language today.
I've been county judge for 11 years, and all of this kind of starting, to be honest, I've not had a crossword with the county judge from Boyle County, either one of you two. I mean, it's been a good working relationship. To my opinion is this sort of started when we had a public meeting and had all the Boyle County Fiscal Court there, all the Mercer County Fiscal Court. It was in our place, and we were addressing the percentages, where we went for like 8 years where we were paying 35%, but our numbers were down in like the 20s and low 30s. And we were just, and that's sort of when I feel like things, you know, and I mean, there were some things said at that public meeting.
That must have been before I came into office. It was in 18 sometime, wasn't it, with Herron?
It was probably 17.
I'm gonna guess it was 17, Judge, and it was about the time, you know, we were having some overcrowding issues that were out there, and Judge Dedman is correct. You know, as far as the ratio, and I'll be perfectly candid, you all can look at that chart that Mary gives us every month with the joint jail. Look at 2011. Look at Mercer County's contribution range from 2011 going forward. Like Tony Wilder says, you know, he always says we, but occasionally he says I. You will see from 2011 going on that our costs dropped. And that respectfully was due to me. And how I chose to prosecute cases and how I chose to wield the power of the request to the court.
You mean our population?
Yes.
Not our cost.
Population.
The inmate population dropped because
but our cost
of your court reform.
Well, our cost dropped, Judge.
Okay.
You know, and that's what it was. And we went several years with having very low costs. Boyle County's costs went up, and that's when it was obvious to everybody, at least on our side, that we had a lower, you know, our percentage as to the overall population and as to the overall cost dropped. You know, I mean, they both dropped. And then it was only as we started to overcrowd that our shit, you know, the rising tide lifts all boats. Our boat was getting lifted up with everybody else, and you know, and we had no control over our costs because we were pegged to the ratio. So that's a little behind the scenes on what happened there.
So you caused us
But
trouble.
I feel like
Sort of,
in
yeah.
that meeting, there were some things that were said, and, you know, it was off-the-cuff things, and I think that sort of got a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and since then, it seems like there's been a little, not friction between any of us, but there's been a little bit of friction between the courts, I guess.
Well, and I guess, and I understand, and I know that, I know the history, and that's good history to know, but we do pretty much have a new court and new system here, so none of us are really familiar with that. I think this has been, and there's no reason why it can't continue to be a great working partnership. And I do, like Chris pointed out the other day, it's unfortunate that just to me, it's more of a, I guess I'm no English major by any means, but the use of the term regional jail facility in the description of the ordinance is a little confusing and unfortunate use of a word, but I think it's more of a, I guess I would describe it as more of an adjective than a noun. It's just kind of a description of the concept
Right.
of it
Because it's
being
never been referred to as a regional jail. It's
Right.
a joint jail.
Very
Right.
specifically, it's not a regional jail by law.
I know, and so I think that was just an unfortunate word choice there that has gotten some people worked up and hung up, and I think some people are, you know, I guess leveraging that word in some of their interpretations of the document in total. And so I think, I mean, I guess to me, it also seems like it comes down to some of the operational authority of the Joint Jail Committee and where that line needs to be drawn. I guess, you know, not knowing all the specifics until just recently, having dug into this and being on the jail committee now for our county, is, I guess I've always viewed the Joint Jail Committee more as the financing arm of the joint jail,
Right.
and not so much the operational arm. But I also
But
think
I don't
that
feel like we have ever tried to micromanage what goes on out there. I mean,
yeah, and that's where you two have the most history with that of anybody in the room, I guess, other than Mr. Jackson.
I mean,
other than Wayne over here.
I've only been in the jail probably 5 times, you know, when we've had some meetings out there and some tours, been out for some of the SAP graduations and that type of thing. But as far as, I don't feel like the Joint Jail Committee has ever tried to tell
The jailer.
either jailer, since I've been county judge, how they need to operate that jail.
Well, as chair for Boyle, but not a member of the Joint Jail Committee, I've had extensive conversations since accepting that position with Brian Wofford. And I'll take you specifically, because you just mentioned the fiscal aspect, and then the other part of management. And I mentioned at the start of the meeting that there's a discrepancy of language, which to me means that it's not in one section and it is in the other. If you'll go to, even on the big document, section 4, page 3, and under B, it's specific to the operating budget. Magistrate Gay's comment. And in those last lines, submit the same to the joint committee, next sentence, upon approval of the joint committee, then it goes to the respective courts. Now flip to,
Back up again, where were you again?
in B, the last couple lines.
4B.
4B, okay, all right.
So it's specific and specific only, as Magistrate Gay has pointed out, to the fiscal side of the management of the detention center. I know for a fact that this is one of the major areas where our jailer has taken me to the top of the next page. Very interesting. The legal language reads, submit to the joint committee, and it lacks their approval, after which the same shall be submitted to the Boyle County Fiscal Court for approval. I'm seeing that as giving the operational side authority totally to, as Brian Wofford says under the Constitution, as an elected state official, the full authority of the management of the program. Now, the misperceptions, I'll call them that since I wasn't there for this, but the misperceptions are that there's been a suggestion that more than authority for the operational side has been talked about in joint jail committee. Not being there to witness it or having any notes from it, that's the area where our jailer is concerned that he operate with the full statutory and constitutional authority that's been given to him as an elected official.
Chris, I know that you've had several conversations with Brian's objections like I have and Magistrate Ellis has. You guys look at that language, and from a physical standpoint, on the joint jail, Mercer County and Boyle County each want to know that the monies we jointly approve through the committee are needed and well founded, okay, well spent. Does this operational aspect have any real bearing on our ability to adjudicate a decision for financial approval? Because I can see his point. I think if this one little section C was omitted completely, he wouldn't have an argument.
I believe that'd be correct. He feels so accountable for the decisions that he has to make on a day-to-day basis. He's just written to us about a leak in the roof. And I'm saying, gosh, you know, I think you don't need our authority to take care of that. And I would never be in his position. I lack the expertise and everything else, and the conviction that he has to doing the right thing for the inmates and the community and his staff. But if this were lifted, I think it would take a huge move in the right direction to make our jailer comfortable and any successors in the future. I hadn't thought of it that way, Judge. That's an excellent idea.
And I guess I'll go back, and I mean, I support and respect Brian greatly, and he does amazing.
I love his
job.
vision and innovative.
Yeah, I guess I go back to what Judge Dedman is saying there, though, is that I feel like he still is the one that is setting the regulations and the policies and procedures, and he's basically just, to me, that's just, he's informing and running those through, and right now, under the structure, the Boyle Countyans are represented with 3 votes
Okay.
on the committee, and so.
I agree with you, but
I don't
this section
understand
C says for committee, for fiscal court final approval, okay? The last sentence, shall be submitted to the Boyle County Fiscal Court for final approval. All of these policies, procedures, and regulation compliance rules, these are the administrative operational aspects of the jail, which he has to do by law. Is this just for us to validate that he's done his job? The joint jail I'm talking about. This is in the joint jail agreement.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just read this as the point that you mentioned before of being fiscally responsible for the overall funding.
Which is Section B.
Which is B.
Which we're putting in, because again, it doesn't say that the Joint Jail Committee for approval by the Mercer County Fiscal Court and the Boyle County Fiscal Court. It actually just, it goes from a 3-2 vote on the Joint Jail Committee to the Boyle Fiscal Court.
But now, I will tell you just from past history, Barry always brought his policy and procedures and rules and everything to Mercer County too. I mean,
And I think Brian would always do that
it
as
was
well.
always passed. I mean,
Yeah.
6-0, but
I know, yeah, that's where I
But
guess,
The
I
sticking
come back,
point
are we
is a
making
required
something?
approval.
I don't think it's required, not by this, it is not required, but
It's not required.
See, it could not have been a legal hiccup to have mentioned at the end of B, both fiscal courts, but the approval process in C is exclusive to Boyle County. And that's where I think either the removal or the recognition of the current diagnose would give Brian the authority that he knows that he has under statutes and Constitution. It's so clear to me when I read it that page 3 says courts and page 4 says Boyle County.
the only thing you might want to, I'm not questioning, because that doesn't even pertain to Mercer County, but you might check, because I don't know if there's anything that says, because I know our sheriff has to come and present his policy and procedures manual and get it approved by the court. Our clerk does. If it's different, then they're not operating, they either have to adopt the county's policies and operate under those. If they want their own, they have to come up with their own and bring it before the fiscal court to get it approved.
And I'd be happy to look at that statute, but that, just off the top of my head, gentlemen, I believe that he's got to do that regardless.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that ultimately, as electeds, if we take a divergence from what the law is, it's the fiscal court and then the taxpayers that are going to be on the hook when he enacts policies that are contrary to law or that are a gross deviation.
I don't think that suggestion should even be brought up.
But I mean, just hypothetically, if he were a rogue jailer that were to choose to implement policies that
We
were
would have been
contrary
through
to
our
law,
approval process.
yeah, it has to be approved by you all, because you all are the ones, and I say you all, the fiscal court, are the ones that are financially on the hook for the choices that he makes out there. So I think there always has to be that.
Let me make a little bit of a suggestion, tweak to this. Y'all read this again. If we took out from the comma after facility, which is basically shall be submitted to the same to the joint committee for approval, and take out all the way from that comma and start with the shall be submitted to the Boyle County Fiscal Court for final approval.
Well, I think you're,
It takes the joint committee's responsibility to approve the administrative operational aspects of the jail. They have to get approval. The jailer, by process, has to get it from the Boyle County Fiscal Court.
Statute provides that, it says he has charge and custody of the jail, and he's supposed to present this budget or whatever for approval by the fiscal court, so.
But if you
Checks
take
and
out-
All right,
balances.
separate out, you're talking fiscal, judge is now talking about
Administrative.
operational.
If you take out from the comma and start with shall after the word facility, that changes, I think that answers the mail more than,
so how would it read again? Go through that one more time.
it would read like, inmate grievances, procedures, and all other matters necessary for the successful operation of the facility shall be submitted to the Boyle County Fiscal Court for final approval.
Would that not, and I'm practicing law here, forgive me, Ted, but would that not eliminate your concern of liability for Mercer, because we're taking it on as the sole responsibility of?
It will not eliminate liability, because the liability comes from an event that happens in the joint jail, which we've already addressed. I believe Ted correctly stated that the joint jail has been paid a premium by Mercer County for the 23 years to cover their liability exposure.
Well, that's not, I don't know that that's 100% accurate. I spoke with Mary after our last meeting.
Okay.
Because my request to you was, and I thought I'll just ask for myself, the question is, to what extent has the Boyle fiscal, has anything been paid out of the general fund of Boyle County? And the response that I got from her, and I'm assuming she was going back through her tenure, which is basically this document, and she said that the only thing that has ever been paid was a deductible to CAECO that came out of the joint jail account, which we would have paid our proportion
Right, your,
So-
whatever the percentage was.
Yeah, you know, whatever the percentage was, so, you know, I don't know that, well, I don't know. I will have to stew on that, because that, well, I'll just have to stew on that and kind of run that around in my head, because there is, you know, the budget dictates your operations, in my mind. You know, the budget, what you can afford to do, the money granted to you is what dictates your operations. You know, Brian might come up with all kinds of policies and all kinds of procedures and all kinds of programs, but if he lacks the funding to do so, you know, it makes no difference.
And I agree with that statement, so that's why I feel like the omission of that comma to the word shall will eliminate a lot of his personal objections to our getting into his soup bowl administratively.
No, and I mean, I must say, I do like that, because I wanted to make sure that you weren't removing the Boyle County fiscal.
No.
Before
No.
approving
No,
You still gotta answer to somebody.
Right.
but I don't feel like, but what Ted just said, if we're watching the dollars and the cents because of our shared fiscal responsibility, he can't do what we can't afford to approve to be done.
An issue that I know, and it predates Magistrate Gay and me, is the concern over mental health. Having been in healthcare administration 26 years, mental health is the whole alphabet, A to Z. And if our jailer feels an obligation to go A to M, and joint jail feels A to E, because of fiscal constraints, then we bat that ball around. So it's more of, is it this large for mental health, or does it fill this entire room? And Brian's argument is it's larger than was being debated at a time that predates us.
He still has financial limits he cannot
Exactly,
exceed.
exactly.
Okay?
And I think he fully understands that.
Whether it be simply from Boyle or Boyle and Mercer.
Exactly.
I don't know, I've not sensed at any time, Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, any time that there's been an opposition to the mental health growth and development programs that the detention centers tried to do. Maybe I missed.
I mean, I think Brian said something that, he says the statute says that the jailer shall provide mental health, to the inmates or whatever, and he's saying that when he was trying to get the mental health, whatever, that Mercer was, I don't know, I can't remember, if they were objecting to it or something.
Sure, and I will.
I guess I missed some of that, or don't.
I think that was right before you all, in the budget before you were elected.
No, Brian wouldn't have been able to do it.
Brian was in, I think it was that first budget, and, you know, I will say this, Brian came in, immediately requested a pay increase for his employees, that I voiced great objection to, because it was in the middle of the year, I felt it was disingenuous. He said, I have money in the budget to do it, let's do it. Why did he have money in the budget? Because he did not have all of his positions filled that was allocated for him. You know, he hit us several times for items that, whether they were necessary or not, you know, arguably they were necessary. But he hit us for those things, and then asked for an additional increase that was not a small amount for the mental health. And, you know, I wish that, you know, there had been some consideration, you know, if he knew that he was coming in and was going to be asking for these additional things, that he gets a thumbs up from this fiscal court, which didn't surprise me, from my fiscal court, which candidly did. And then, you know, now it's okay, we're 4 months down the road, we're doing budgeting, and this is the most important thing on the table. I need additional resources to do it. When we were already providing mental health, it might not have been to his satisfaction, but we were already providing mental health through a telehealth option.
And I don't remember ever really saying, no, we don't want this. It was more, let's hold off and see what this budget is going to look like.
Now that it's coming back, I remember it more of that. We don't object to
Right.
stepping up on mental health, but we gotta do it smartly
You
financially.
know, you do that, some of the stuff, and I would have to go back and look, I know we don't tape those meetings, I would have to go back and look at the minutes and see what they were, but, you know, there were things about, bringing people in for job placement, and people, this predates all that. I know this, you know, I understand right now, I see the green light on, but at the time, I don't think we were recording those, but, you know, it was job placement, it was housing placement, it was a lot of things that, you know, and I think the word that I used was that I had a philosophical disagreement with, that we were providing all those services at additional cost to the taxpayers. You know, and I mean, that I think was it. Of course, as you all pointed out, you have a 3-2 vote. If Milward and I thought that it was the worst idea, the Titanic going too fast at night, you know, we still got outvoted. So I think that is a canard. I think that is not an issue. I think that that's something that Brian's pointing to. I think that the liability that he feels like falls on Boyle County through being named in lawsuits, you know, I think that those are are issues that he's throwing up, which don't really have much basis in reality.
But I'd like to, and I don't disagree with you, Ted, on that, but I would like to be able to show him in black and white why it is it's not accurate, okay? And if CAECO can say, we have provided insurance through the Joint Jail Committee, through the policy that they have, in black and white, that Mercer is paying their fair share of liability insurance to cover an incident that happens to a Mercer inmate in the detention center? Or any inmate, I guess. Any inmate, period.
Yes, sir.
Period.
I mean, all I'm saying too is.
But if we have it in black and white, then it's not just coming out of our understanding or our mouth. You know, it's here.
You know, what I think he's saying though, which I pointed out in the last meeting, you know, we got policy limits, you know, we have insurance which Mercer contributes to, you know, and so there's a claim, say they pay the policy limits on that or whatever, but they don't pay anything above that. I mean, that potentially,
Do we pay anything above that?
well, I'm saying they might not accept our policy limits, you know, in a lawsuit, for example, when you're trying to negotiate, and then who are they going to go after? Are they going to go after Mercer? And Brian said no, they're going to sue us, you know. So I mean, that's.
Okay, how do we fix that? If it exceeds the CAECO limits, can you?
But if the only time we have had lawsuits, and I'm not 100% on this is an area of law that is way past my expertise. You know, whether it was right or wrong, when we have had litigation costs, they have previously come out of the joint jail budget, which comes out of
Which
the
we still pay a
which
percentage of.
which we still pay a percentage of. So I think that financially, there is, you know, that there appears in the past to have been some liability, you know, on behalf of the jail as an entity that is, you know, Brian doesn't make money, he only gets money, that, you know, is contributed to by the fiscal court. I'm not sure, and I'd be happy to talk with the people at CAECO. You know, I think that, you know, we're covered just like you all are. If there's, I mean, see, we might have 2 deductibles to pay. You know, if there's a higher liability limit that's available, I'd be interested in knowing what that is and allowing the 2 fiscal courts, allowing the Joint Jail Committee to make
Instead of it being $1 million, it might be $5 million or whatever.
Or you could draw into the contract and say, anything over and above what insurance pays, Mercer will pay their respective share pursuant to, you know.
To the percentage of
20-something
participation.
percent, you know, something like that. Or say, depending on whether it's a Mercer County inmate, you know, it might be different if it's a Mercer County inmate suing us versus I don't know. Like, as far
Well,
as
I don't know that we need to draw a difference.
I don't know.
An inmate suit,
There are
inmate suit.
There are inmates collectively.
Yeah, Our,
Well,
not
yeah.
Mercer's, ours.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, if it's a state inmate, they're our inmates.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could be from Trigg County.
I'm just
Yeah.
throwing out.
Yes, and, you know, and that's an issue of governmental insurance law that, you know, is past my level of expertise, but that's what we've done in the past. If Brian is concerned about liability falling back on both fiscal courts, maybe we see if there is a higher rate or a higher, you know, a higher aggregate policy limit that we can apply for.
I think that's fine, but if there were a worst-case nuclear explosion kind of thing, and that judgment exceeded those policy limits, would Mercer agree in writing that upon a court order where the policy limits are exceeded, would Mercer agree to pay a percentage of whatever that award might be, beyond the limits of insurance?
And that's a good question, a good thing to ponder.
So, we're recording this, do we need to write this, are you writing any of these? She is.
Yeah, you know, and that's a legitimate question to ask. I think that the answer has been in what we've done in the past, but whether, you know.
There's a history
that's
there.
Yeah,
There is a history there.
That's a question, I mean, that's.
But we're talking about open-ended, long-term, broad, big picture.
Sure.
That if there is a suit that is awarded a judgment that exceeds limits, who pays for how much?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a good question. Does anybody know what our liability limits are?
I do not.
And I don't even know that they offer tiers, but, you know, I do think that it's telling when Mary says we've never had a suit. And we've had.
No, I agree.
You know, we've never had one that's actually triggered anything close to that. And God willing, we never, you know.
Never will.
Well, that's
Before we get too far away from C, is there a chance we could come to agreement on my suggestion on C, if taken out from the comma to shall?
I think that's something Milward and I'd be happy to discuss with the fiscal court.
I think that's a huge move that would salve the concerns of our jailers.
I mean, do we think that's gonna satisfy Brian taking that, and that alone is gonna satisfy him?
No, but it would help. We're
It-
talking
it's
about
a
tweaking.
huge step.
We're not changing the whole document. We're talking
Right.
about tweaking it where we can.
Well, I mean, I wanna tweak that and, you know, and say, well, it's still not what I need to.
Well, I think the constitutional authority is the major issue that he has, and that's going to come when the AG responds to the judge's request.
And I would like to request a letter through, and you guys can do this, or I can, whatever, through our jailer from the KJA to give us a legal concern, a letter of question about the agreement. I want to know specifically what their objections are.
And that would be really helpful, because like I said, it's my take on what Brian had submitted to Milward that I reviewed was that it was literally almost everything that was in the statute. You know, this is my job under the statute, I can't do it because of going to jail. This is my job under the statute, I can't do it because of going to jail. You know, and I don't know that
Chris, do you know what are his major, I mean, are there, obviously that could be a long list that we're referring to here. What, I mean, I know you mentioned the liability issues, some of the operational issues, but to me, what are his constitutional authorities if we don't have a jail? If we haven't had this partnership and we, let's say, you know.
I mean, there's a statute that says it all. I don't have that with me right now, but I mean, he takes charge and custody of. It says something. The jailer has charge and custody of the jail. Da 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 da. He will prepare a budget, which he will submit to the fiscal court. So, I mean, I think he thinks that, and also like if you look at the definition of regional jail, which
It's
I'm a
not.
little hung up on that. It talks about, he kind of feels like this is interlocal agreement that's kind of pulling some things that a regional jail requirement, or regional jail does, like, they have like a kind of a joint jail kind of type committee that kind of can, so to speak, tell not the jailer, but there's an administrator, how to operate and so forth, and he kind of feels like that's how it's going, like he's being kind of told what to do, as if this were a regional jail operation. And, you know, regional jail, one of the things it says, a regional jail can sue or be sued and stuff like that, and he's like, well, kind of operating like a regional jail, but yet Mercer can't be sued, Boyle County is the one who's going to get
But
sued.
Chris, I go back, and in section 4B, it's very clear that it's the operational side, and it's on the issues you just raised in section C at the top of the page, to eliminate that clause from the one shall to the other shall. Takes away all that operational concern that you were just describing. So the fiscal side stays with both, and the operational side is, I'm looking at 3 of the 7 votes that we have on fiscal court, and that's the sole authority at that point. It's very clear.
Those are probably the main things, and the only other thing I've seen in the agreement, which I don't really like, which I'm never going to probably enter into an agreement with somebody else that says, hey, I can't get out of this agreement unless the other person says it's okay.
I've certainly never seen it.
I understand their point, like they don't want somebody to just get out and then they're left high and dry, or, you know, we're going to send our inmates. I totally understand that, but that's kind of a hard one to enter into a contract where you.
Oddly enough, in
Maybe
the,
it's so unconscious, like somebody is forced to enter into like a contract with to rent a facility or something with a landlord because they're in dire need, like, you know, and then now they want to try to get out of it, and the landlord's just like jacking them around, and it's so one-sided, but they can't get out of it because if this landlord says nope, you can't get out of it. So anyway, just in contracts in general, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem fair to me that you can't get out of it if the other person's not willing to let you out of it.
Well, and guys, I will say this, just so you all understand me and the Mercer County perspective fully. The $3.5 odd million that we have put into debt service that we walk away this time and this date, 2020, when that debt service is paid off, is why that's in there. Because that would be a real nice trick that in 2019, the day after we have the debt service paid off,
Kick you to the curb.
after well, you understand. I mean, this is why that is in that contract, is because, you know, in 1996, that contract benefited you all. Because had we walked away in 1998 on that first year of debt service, and Tony Wilder was looking at a huge bill that Boyle County taxpayers were going to have to fund on their
$6.5 million
own,
by
you know,
itself. Yeah.
that they were going to have to fund on their own. That clause was more valuable to the Boyle County Fiscal Court at that point. The clause is now more valuable to us at this point. That's why it's there, because we have to be able to have long-term agreements that can be relied upon regardless of who's temporarily occupying these seats.
I get that.
You know, that's
I
why
get that.
this is.
And then we look at that jail, is it really worth what we like spend on it now? You know, it's just continuing to depreciate. I mean, it's probably not worth, I mean, I don't know what's the number or whatever, but.
And I guess that goes back to my point about if we didn't have this partnership, and we didn't have this interlocal agreement, and we didn't have a good partner in Mercer County that, you know, we've had bumps, I'm sure, along the way in the road, but it's been resolved and worked out, then our jailer wouldn't have any constitutional authority because we may or may not have a jail at this point in time. And so because we've worked hard and we funded a jail and together we've paid that bond off, we're in a better position to now move forward. We've got other issues we've got to tackle at this point in time. And personally, I'm hoping that we will continue in a partnership to have some form or fashion of a joint jail. Yeah, we all have to talk about how we fund it and who pays what and all of that, and we need to get more money out of the state and on and on and on. There's lots of challenges and issues, but I personally think it's a good partnership, and I agree with the judge. And maybe there are some little tweaks here and there, but I think it still comes down to the funding, financial, fiscal part of it versus a little bit of tweak in the operational. But I still feel like the Boyle County citizens are well represented with the 3-2 vote on the committee, and it's reflected in the funding differential.
I need
as well.
the council in the room to tell me, here's my estimation. Under section 4B, the joint committee would recommend an appropriation, okay? And, let's say the joint committee would approve a fiscal year operating budget, and upon approval, we send it each respective court for approval. If in the unforeseen but potential or probable that one court, pick it, doesn't matter, Boyle or Mercer, says no to the approval of the joint committee, whether it pass or fail, you still have a majority of either court and the joint committee's vote for approval or disapproval. Say, Boyle County disapproved the joint committee's recommendation for approval. Mercer approved it and Boyle denied it. And then approved because you have 2 out of 3 voting processes that approved it. Am I making my concern clear?
Well, that could change our current authority to override the joint, well, or within the joint committee, because we have a 3-2 vote. So,
No, well, it goes beyond that. We have a 3-2 vote. It came out of committee to approve the budget. One court disapproves the budget, and their court and the other approves it. What happens?
I think it goes back to the committee, and that's where the sausage is made.
and it's only fiscal, it's not operational.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear in the thing, but I think that it goes back to the committee, and if it's a, it's gonna require some negotiations. And I know that there was some discussion, you almost had that issue pop up more recently than you can imagine, when our costs went up significantly with the decrease in the canteen percentage. Cause that was a big change in our budget.
It was.
So that issue has come up. There's also the issue that, it leaves this, it goes to your all's budgetary committee and you all make change. I mean, I'm assuming that's how it does. It goes to the two of you all, and you all make recommendations and changes that then comes to your fiscal court, which arguably is not appropriate because those changes weren't vetted through that. We don't know what those changes are, on the Mercer County end of things. If that.
I don't know. Now, has that happened? Have we altered any joint jail recommended?
I know.
Yeah, you all changed things this past budgetary cycle, I believe. I mean, Mary could tell you for sure, but my belief is that it's happened in the past. That it comes, that the budget that gets presented to you all goes through some sort of a tweaking process and then gets voted on over here. And all Mercer County has is the budget that came out of joint jail. And of course, our issue is typically we're kind of, these budgets are time constrained for approval. So we run out of time. We don't, if we approve a budget and then we've got 45 or 60 days because you've got to get it to GLD for approval and everything else, where does our time go? So that's a concern on this, and I've always been more concerned with the financial than the operational end of what things go. It's said I it would not hurt my feelings for Brian to have a certain amount of money that he could say, this is what my recommendations are, but it's always, well, I've gotta have the money here, and I've gotta have the money here. And by the way, we're gonna get sued if we don't have the money over here. I mean, it's always more, and that's what I hear from my magistrates, that's what I hear from my constituents. You know, that's what I hear from my wife when I go home. You know, and that's our concern is we're ratcheting up our costs, and I still think, and I would challenge you all, I would challenge Brian, you know, find me somebody that's in a comparable jail that's providing better services than we are for the budget that we have. I would love to see it because I'd love to figure out how to do this.
But on mental health in particular, because that's my bailiwick for 26 years of healthcare administration, I would rather be the leader among peers and for our jailer to recognize both what's out there in terms of mental health services that weren't out there 40 years ago when I started in healthcare, and what's out there now. And secondly, with the litigious society that we're in, we have to be a leader when we can fit within our fiscal constraints. And I think we have a jailer who understands that completely. He sees what's going on all across the state in the 78 jails that we have, and no matter large or small, I would rather be on the lead in terms of delivering services as long as it can be affordable.
How do you want to proceed on my recommendations under C? You want to take that back and discuss it with your folks, or because see, to me that's putting more of an. I just heard everything you said, but that's putting more of an operational approval.
It's backdoor operation.
Into his statutory requirements. He can. Let me say this: any jailer can want what they want, but they're limited by what the government that they serve, and he serves the people of Boyle County. I got it. But he doesn't make money, as you said. He gets money. He can only get what the county governments and the joint jail can afford budgetarily. He works within that box that is created, you know, by circumstance. But we all do that, don't we? We are limited to what we can do as a court by our budget capability.
Yeah, and the thing that makes this really hard is that this is the first part of the budget that is produced. So you really don't know what the rest of the budget's looking like.
No, you don't. You don't.
And that makes it really hard to sit there and say, yes.
And this is a big ticket.
We can
Both
fund
of
all of
us.
these things that you're wanting when we don't know what the rest of the budget's gonna look like.
Sure.
This is the 600-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
And guys, I respect that, I respect you all. I know that Judge Wilder came and addressed you at your last fiscal court meeting and reminded you all, as I was reminded, 20 years ago, Boyle County attorney filed suit against the jailer because the jailer didn't want to uphold or didn't want to abide by this agreement.
But that's history.
Yeah, it is. That's history.
And not this jailer.
Which gets back to my point that we need to have contracts that are bigger, that can bind, and that are more important than any of us who are temporarily in these seats. In 2022, there might be a new jailer. With
Be
a
new
different-
judges?
With a different belief.
Yeah.
I think they take that and they look at C, they talk to their people about the liability over and above. We talk about maybe that room clause that I said I don't really like how neither party can get out of it. I mean, I don't know. There's surely something we can write.
you're getting into a very complex issue when I think the judge has come up with a very simple solution to the majority of the concerns that are on the table.
I'm just saying if we're fixing it, we'll have to fix it all at once, not.
Oh.
piecemeal it.
You know, the
Yeah,
tweaking.
I think we just need to look at this. I mean, you know,
And
I don't have a problem with this because Mercer County doesn't have a say-so in it as it's written now. I mean, it would just be the joint jail.
But it's something somebody
Right.
he could see and say, I have to,
Right.
the joint jail has to approve my operational procedures. And I heard Ted say that can drive up cost. Yes, it can.
But he's
But we
staying
can
under
only
budget.
pay what we can afford to pay.
But what I would like is run this in front of somebody, the Keiko attorney, just to make sure that these aren't some things that have to be in there by law. You know, that we're putting the right, that it's okay to take that language out.
That's fine. I still think, I don't know who does it. I'm not the chairman of the joint jail, okay? Who does the request through the jailer? Can you guys talk to Brian and say,
Sure.
we need a letter from KJA stating their legal concerns with the joint jail contract so we can address them?
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear back from the attorney or general also, you know, before we
Absolutely.
finalizing. I
Well,
think
we're
that
not,
is-
we're not close to final. We're working on it. We're gonna meet Friday. The thing, excuse me, the thing's still going on,
Yeah.
okay? We'll meet Friday over at y'all's place. But, Tom, would you mind requesting that the jailer request a KJA letter of assessment on the joint jail committee from their attorneys?
Gotcha, will do, yeah.
And I guess I still, kind of back to where we started now on the Attorney General part, what is the question we're asking the Attorney General to give an opinion on?
I think in general, is anything in this agreement, interlocal agreement, violate the statutory responsibility and authorities of the jailer in question? Does it violate his constitutional responsibilities? Does it hinder? Does it impose undue requirements on him? That's the bottom line. Is that not appropriate to
No,
request
that's good.
a?
That's good, I just wanted to be clear on what we were asking the Attorney General to decide on. But that's appropriate to me.
That's what I want to get out of it.
I mean, I'd be curious what they would, you know, I'd be curious what they would say.
And then, they may not do it.
Yeah.
They may not do it.
Yeah, pretty much, so we're busy, we're doing, dealing with.
We have enough- we have enough-
Yeah, they're busy.
But, I don't know. I think Daniel will, or somebody on his staff will address it. I don't know. I hope they do. It's kind of like asking the Supreme Court for an opinion, a case that goes before it, and they remind it back to a lower court for a decision because they don't want to take it on their docket.
Happens often, yeah. Yeah, but we'll work through Brian to get something from his association. And I wouldn't mind calling Rich Ornstein. at
Well,
Keiko.
I'll tell you what, Ted and Chris and everybody in the room, I think if we invited Rich over at our next transition meeting to address some things, he's got a wealth of knowledge on a broad scale basis with a lot of different areas. I think he would come. I know he would come. And I think it'd be good to have him here if we had issues that we want to draw, especially after we have a letter from KJA.
Yeah, if we can concur on that, I think that's a great idea, responding to your concern that we go to Keiko.
Yeah. I'm fine with it.
He's my go-to guy.
Ted?
That's fine. I think that I don't know well, if Rich speaks, I'll listen. I'll just put it that way. I'd be more interested on the Keiko end as far as the liability goes, and if we can, if we can discuss this issue of the specter of a future lawsuit.
So let me throw that out to Michelle, that works for Keiko, and Temple Jewett, and we'll get that question resolved too. Okay, I'll initiate that aspect of it on the liability. If you want, if it's okay with you that I do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just, you know, because that's an issue that that's one of those things that we probably should be grateful that in 20-some odd years, it's not been an issue, but, you know, that would be something better to know today, because we don't know what tomorrow might bring.
Absolutely.
And it'd be a lot clearer for both fiscal courts if we've got a better idea as to how that goes before, you know, before that bucket of water gets spilled all over the floor and we have to fight over who cleans it up.
Yeah. I will initiate that through Temple and his staff. Get a clarification on that.
Sounds good.
And you guys consider that shell to shell kind of thing on,
Yeah.
on 4C? Those are two tweaks. Anybody else see anything we need to address today? You know, we can stay till 12 or we can.
So we have a joint jail meeting Friday, is that what you're saying?
Friday at 1 o'clock over in Mercer.
All right, so I got some issues with it, I hope you said it.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be curious, and Milward and I'd be happy to discuss, you know, we're happy to discuss anything with our fiscal court. They're anxious, just like our citizenry is wanting clarity on how we go forward.
I don't want to, I'd like to keep this ball moving down the field. So I will talk to Keiko today. You guys, something, I'm not telling you how to do it, but get back with Brian, request that letter of issuance of concerns about the contract from KJA, the attorneys. We'll move this thing forward. I think we need to meet next week sometime and bring this, keep it moving. I'll give you an update on what Keiko has to say about liability insurance.
And just one more thing, since we're meeting Friday, and there's been no formal action with respect to Brian being on the committee, I will call him and encourage him that he's still there, he's still on, and we need him on Friday.
He's welcome. He's welcome.
Sure. I mean, I think it's important for him to be there. I mean, that's how I know what's going on at the jail.
Right.
Without that conduit to what's going on at the jail, we're driving with one eye open.
Yeah.
You know, I don't go, like I said, I've been in the jail about 5 times in 11 years. But, you know, I get my knowledge of what's happening out there from our joint jail meetings when they give reports.
And we have to know that, because we don't get the benefit of Brian coming into our fiscal court meeting and telling us what's going on. You have to remember that as far as Milward and I, we have to know what's going on, because otherwise we say to our magistrates, I don't know, which magistrates, that's a terrible thing to say when the item earlier on the agenda was, well, we need to pay $65,000 to Boyle County for joint jail costs. What do you mean you don't know what's going on? I mean, we have to know that. That will not be tenable for us.
I think
Yeah.
you should know that, but from an administrative operational standpoint, the purse strings drive what is done as much as possible. I think informationally, everybody needs to know what the money is spent for and why it's spent. Both sides. But if you can say, because of that information being presented by the jailer or his chief deputy, who speaks for him, to come to Mercer Court, I don't see anything wrong with that once a quarter or whatever. How often we do it, I don't know.
Sure. How often has anybody from the jail been, since Brian's been in office? Once, that I recall. To our court. Once.
Okay.
And that was right at the very beginning when they asked for the pay raise.
And that was,
Yeah, so just I'll throw that out there. And while Brian says he works for the taxpayers of Boyle County, I understand how someone can come to that conclusion. He works for the taxpayers of Boyle County, because we are paying a portion, or for both counties, because we are paying a portion of his salary, and this is how this agreement is set up. So whether he's elected through us or not, he is accountable to the Mercer County taxpayers for how that money is being spent in his facility.
Mhm.
There's no question as to that.
No, I don't disagree with that.
Nor would Brian.
No, I don't think you would either. I don't, but that's a point that needs to be had and discussed, because he's got some concerns and observations. But if it is truly because he sees the committee as impeding his statutory responsibilities, well, I want to address that, because I think that 15 words out of that one sentence in 4C would go a long way toward eliminating his concern about the approval of the joint committee, not Boyle County Fiscal Court, to approve policies, procedures, and operational grievance processes. Wayne, you've been quiet over there again.
Listening today.
You got any comments on what's been said or discussed? Okay.
So we're gonna have another transitional meeting next week.
Yeah, I'd like for us all to agree to meet next week, and I'll get some KCO information.
Could we
You'll
meet
get
at
the-
1 after court?
Do what?
Could we meet at 1 after fiscal court?
When's y'all's court? Same day, same time?
Same day.
Or
You
maybe a
don't,
little
you don't
later.
run 3 hours like we do.
I was gonna say, how about if we meet at 10 after court?
10:01?
That's right.
You're trying to set a world record.
Have you seen the agenda?
Oh.
Or as Ann knows, everybody just put what time and date you want to meet, and we'll figure it out later.
2 weeks, maybe it might take a little bit longer than we think to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna suggest that too, with the
I think
court
2
meeting
weeks
next
would be
week.
better.
Well, then this.
Okay, you get into Labor Day week, as far as the calendar goes, I think, in 2 weeks.
No, that's,
Is that 3 weeks out?
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah, two weeks is what,
September 1st.
Everybody's dove hunting.
Yeah, I guess it is. Because next week's the 25th.
Yeah.
The
so
following is the 21st.
How about we
or
do-
1st
How
September.
about we do September 1? That'd be the week before Labor Day weekend. The Tuesday before Labor Day weekend. And Derby weekend this year, by the way.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Tom?
What-
10 o'clock on that first work, everybody?
I don't have anything September 1.
Did you guys see the photos and the email chain on the detention center roof? Did
Yes,
you-
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Those are some things that need to be discussed at joint jail. For some funding.
Do we have, we don't know, is there any repair cost estimates or anything?
Haven't-
Not yet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. At 10 o'clock.
September 1st, which is a Tuesday at 10 o'clock. That
Man,
works
it's
for
hard to
me.
believe we're already that close to September.
Oh.
Gosh.
Now, Labor Day is the next Monday. It's perfect. That's perfect. September 1st, 10 o'clock. Here, is this comfortable for you guys enough? And it's not a power play kind of thing. Is this okay?
Yeah.
You got your new tables, by the way?
I like our new
And
tables.
chairs.
And our new system that we got in here.
Yeah, we got cameras and microphones and I
Yeah,
moved the
and
clock
thing-
so we could all see it over there
I know,
better.
that's what the judge was pointing to.
The
earlier
clock.
today, 'cause clock used to be there, so I was looking around for the clock, and he was reminding me it's been moved.
So you can tell them in 3 hours. And
Yeah, we're 3 hours.
I know, you watch
Guys, we
it
need to
go.
wrap this up. Come on.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
What else we want to try to accomplish today or discuss? Guys,
I would just like to make the comment, because I watched your all's court meeting, and, Magistrate Kaywood seemed to be very upset over the Harrodsburg article. You know, I think that article was totally written off of the article that was in the Danville Advocate Messenger the week before. You know, the headlines was taken out of
Totally.
the context of, you know, Brian saying that he wasn't going to be on the Joint Jail Committee anymore, and then I think it was, the comment was made, well, the Joint Jail is defunct now, you know, and so I think it was all just taken off of that article and written one for the Harrodsburg paper.
Yeah.
That he just read into, well, if it's defunct and the jailer ain't going to be a part of it, Boyle County's walking away, and you know, so that isn't the feeling of anyone on the fiscal court. You know, we're all working together here to make this thing right and good for all parties. So you know, I don't want you all to think that we're over there filling our paper.
Hopefully, if John's watching or listening, as Judge Dedman has said, and he said in that article, all the conversations regarding this issue have been cordial and clear can be.
I think the media has tried to make it seem that we're having a lot more problems with
A lot
each
more
other
friction than there is.
than there really is.
That's why my response when I was getting inquiries over the last week or 10 days was it was a cooperative, collaborative meeting, and we feel very good about it.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully we can agree on some tweaks. That's all we're looking at, is trying to make this better, because maybe somebody wants to do away with it, but I don't think it's the preponderance of either court majority.
Right. No. I
And
mean, it's been a good thing for 20-something years. There isn't any reason that it can't continue to be a good thing.
Right.
yeah, and y'all spent money, we've spent money, you've saved money by not having your own jail, we've saved money by having you as a partner. You know, I don't see any negatives there across the board. But, you know, if he is concerned, and Tom, you've talked to him, and I've talked to him, and Chris, you've talked to him, we'll wrap this up. But I think his concerns are, his authority is being impacted by the joint jail. Physically, I don't see he has too much of a leg to stand on, because it's the court's responsibility, you know, to give the budget the items, because he doesn't make money, okay? He makes some money off contracts, you know, different things, but it's not enough to run the detention center.
Well, basically every segment of our county governments are run by the fiscal court, because the fiscal court funds the road fund.
FISCAL, you know, that's our responsibility.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, the money part of it, yes, we basically control every aspect of county government.
Yeah. EMS, I can go on down, Public Works, solid waste, all of it, animal control.
Yeah. So, but I think good meeting, and I think
Agreed.
we know what we need to do from here and get some
Okay,
answers.
I'm going to talk to Keiko about our liability, jointly, our liability limits, the history on it, what I can find out, okay? And what happens with the Keiko, this is where I'll work between Pimple and Rich. What happens if there were a nuclear option or something presented to us by a judge that exceeded our limits?
And see if Rich can come.
And see if Rich can come to our next one on the 1st.
Or we can zoom them in. Or whatever.
He'll
I
walk
like
off.
it better I'm old school.
Rich will walk out of the screen every time he starts to talk.
He will. Ted, you got any recommendations? He's always pensive in thought, isn't he?
Not at the moment, Judge.
Okay. Chris?
No, good meeting.
Wayne?
Good meeting.
Outstanding. Very good.
Anything else, Jamie? Please.
Good, thank you. It was good. I agree. I think it's a good meeting. And like you said, I think we've had good meetings. And we're all trying to move forward in a cooperative and positive
September,
way.
10 o'clock here.
And having dealt with the media all through my career, Judge, you or Ted might want to call that reporter and tell him to view the tape, since it's public, because I think he will see the cooperation that we're.
And hopefully, Robert knows about it. I hope he can see it. Robert.
Perhaps he's on. I hope he
Maybe-
is.
Robert knew about this meeting today, because I called him yesterday.
Good.
Because we told him 1 o'clock, and when I found out it was at 10 o'clock, I called him back.
I thought that's what we talked about on the phone, was 10 today and 1 on Friday.
I think it was one of those days.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's my bad. Maybe my see, I'm getting older every day.
We got it.
It actually worked out better because Wayne has to go to a funeral, so he wouldn't have been able to be here at 1 o'clock anyway.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I was joking about, us just making up a time and setting a meeting for that.
Yeah.
And-
It's not Ann's fault, it's my fault. I don't remember correctly.
Same, I'm
I'll
there
need a
with you.
little help.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Y'all
much.
have a great day. Appreciate it. We stand adjourned.
Old bumps and high fives all around.
Yep.